is Tuesday. It's January 20th of 2015. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing your evening with us. We are so glad that you're here. I'm Aaron. Wait. Say it again.
No, I'm Brad.
Now he's Brad. I turned his mic up. That's how you shut your husband up, is turn his mic off. Anyway, just FYI. Okay, on a serious note, folks. We have got a very interesting show lined up for you tonight, and it's not a show just like a Barnum and Bailey circus. Sometimes and most of the time, we do have very serious information that needs to get out to the people. And this is one of those shows that I think really needs to be discussed, bantered about, and passed on. I find that many of us do believe in the Bible, and we do believe that we are supposed to be preparing. The funny thing is we can't prepare for everything. It's just not even physically possible to prepare for everything that we need to. However, I feel like if we're armed with knowledge, that's half the battle. Because if we have an inkling or an idea of what possibly could happen, we're less likely to curl up in a corner and pretty much die of fear. We're much more likely to say, okay, I remember X show and X person talking about something like this was possible. And your brain can engage a little bit better if you're armed with the knowledge. And I believe there's a passage in the Bible, correct me if I'm wrong, that basically said, my people die from lack of knowledge. Perish from lack of knowledge, I'm sorry. Perish. So this is one of those shows where I think we need to listen intently. This may be one of those shows you want to play back again to pick up more. The gentleman coming on tonight is very well researched. I have his documentation myself. Some of it will be posted up at the Truth Traveler as I figure out how to do that. Bear with me. He has his own YouTube channel, and he came into this as a disbeliever in what we're going to talk about tonight, so that almost gives him more validity with me. We've had so much different information out there circulating on the internet about Planet X. Most of them just go over the top, and they're not even backing anything up. They really can't source anything. This gentleman is going to source it for you. He's also going to tie it into the Bible, past, present, and future. That's what drew me to him. His name is Gil Broussard, and he's an amateur astronomer. He's a researcher. His YouTube channel is Planet, the number 7, and then X, Planet 7X. And you'll find out why it's called that here in a minute. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the show tonight, Gil.
Well, thank you, Aaron. It's a pleasure. Pleasure joining you today.
I'm glad you're here. Well, you too. And I am going to get some of those things like we talked about up at the Truth Traveler. I think I can do it. We just got to play with it, Gil. This information, I think, needs to be passed. And I've listened to your show with Augusto Perez twice. Okay? I listened to another interview you did with two gentlemen that they have divided up into like a 5-part series, 6-part series, something like that. I've listened to that as well. And I still can't absorb it all, Gil.
Yeah, well,
maybe I'm just...
well, this is a subject that's very difficult. You can't do it on just a casual basis. You have to really be interested or be concerned, let's say, and really look at the data deeply. And I can touch on it on just maybe a 2-hour show, but it would take probably more like 5 to 6 hours to get everything processed properly. But,
I think so too.
Why don't we call this part 1?
Part 1, we may have to.
All right.
Okay, Gil, explain to the listeners about the phone call from your friend asking you about Planet X, and let's go from there. I'm just going to turn the mic over to you, and unless I'm not understanding something or I have a question, I'm not going to interrupt you because I think you need to talk.
Well, please ask questions at any time. But yes, this whole research started from a phone call when a friend of mine called me, and he asked me if Planet X was real and if it was biblical. And my first response to that was that it was not real, and that I was pretty sure I could prove it biblically that it didn't. There was parts in it that would state that it wouldn't exist. So after the conversation, I said, well, I'll probably get more of these in the future. Let me back that up with information, because I'm making a claim on what I think, not what I know. So that started the search, and when I read quite a bit of the stuff that's on the internet, just like you had said at the entrance of your show, that they're not backing it up with evidence. They're pretty much reading what it turned out to be. They're reading eyewitness accounts, but no evidence for us to confirm its orbit, its length of travel, its size, many of these other items. Where's the data that we can look at with our own eyes and make our own decisions? And what I'll put forth on your show tonight is more the evidence side. And I know some people out there are not really interested in evidence, but this is the first obstacle we have to get past. Is it real or is it not? Okay.
Exactly.
And so,
let me interject here. Gil. There is so much disinformation out there on the internet. When I first started researching Planet X, you're almost bombarded with everything, and you're just like, you finally say, okay, you know what? I'm not an astronomer at all. I don't know anything. I can find the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. Okay, that's about it. Okay. Well, I can see the moon. I can see Venus. Okay. I just gave up.
Okay. Sure. Well, the information I'm going to give you tonight will narrow that field of view.
Awesome.
Considerably. See, there's 88 constellations. 88. And I'm going to show or talk about 5 documented scientific reports and 1 actual missing encounter with it that NASA had. And out of the 88 constellations, all of these independent studies, not looking at each other's data, independent, are pointing to the same constellation. And that constellation is Sagittarius. And not just anywhere in Sagittarius, but on the ecliptic. So the search field is extremely narrow now to look. All right?
Okay.
And what got us started with this was a finding. It's a white paper report for the ones out there in the audience. That's a scientific report of the supernova of 1054. It's a re-evaluation. That report was pointing out that people assumed that it was a supernova when actually it was not. When they went back and reread the text, this object is seen in multiple constellations, and a supernova does not move. Therefore, it cannot be in multiple constellations. It was viewed for 26 months, and the Chinese, the Koreans, and the Japanese are so accurate with their documentation. This is exactly what we were looking for, to better plot a segment of its course to better predict its path. And the Asian astronomers gave us the year, the month, the time of day, the place of origin, in what city or in a country, the level of brightness, where in what constellation was it by any known stars, what angle and distance from the stars it was. And with that kind of information, you can plot it. If you have multiple sightings, which they gave us. So when I found that report and they didn't know what it was, they listed it as that it was not a supernova, and they didn't really move on with the research. You're just making a statement that they don't know what it is, but it's not a supernova. Well, I looked at it and said, well, I think I can plot this. Let me make an attempt. And I needed to have a first try because I don't have the level of computers that NASA would have or anyone else. So I had to take an estimate, since I was already on the assumption that CO 6 and 7 in Revelation is talking about a meteorite shower, and it says that they will wish death for 5 months. That's a span of 150 days. That's equal to the time of Noah between the first event and I call it the second event, where the water started to recede, and by the time the water rained, and was 150 days. That's the same amount of time period. So I said, well, let's see if we'll put this down, and then I needed to know an entry and exit point. Well, I chose the exit point to be somewhere around mid-Passover. And from that point, I stretched it to where it went to the end of August. That's 150 days. And it went around the sun on the planetary plane of Earth. Very few objects on the planetary plane of Earth to start out with. But I have to start somewhere. And for it to have a meteorite shower, it has to be on a planetary plane, at least one leg. But this is talking about 2 meteorite showers. So you have both legs crossing Earth's planetary plane twice with a fixed point around the sun. So that's 3 fixed points. That's locked in. So the odds of this object matching that data is greater than winning the lottery 10 times in a row. So I made the first attempt. I placed it. I took the software, I built a model, placed it in the software, put my position in Beijing as well as China, Japan and Korea from the viewpoint of the astronomers of the time period with the exact year and date. Let the model move the object according to Kepler's laws of planetary motion. As it gets closer to the sun, it moves quicker.
Okay, hold that thought right there.
Go ahead.
Hold that thought, Kepler. We're going to go to break, and we'll be back up with a short segment. We'll be right back to Gil Broussard discussing Planet 7X. We're back with our guest, Gil Broussard, and we're discussing Planet 7X. Right before the break, Gil, you talked about the Kepler theory about how it speeds up the closer to the sun that it gets.
Yes, Kepler's laws of motion, which the Chinese or any ancient observer would not have known how to fake the movement of a planet because they didn't have the formula to better do this to where it matches a model. In other words, Kepler he published his laws in 1609, and so we're talking about when the Chinese saw this was in 1054 A.D., less than 900 years ago. And that's one of the reasons why when you read so-called the 3600-year theory, that doesn't work out as far as the evidence that I've accumulated. It didn't even work out for many people bring up Dr. Harrington, Robert Harrington. He did not agree with Stitchen's model. He agreed that there's another planet out there, but he did not agree with a 3,600-year orbit. He had a much shorter orbit and a much smaller planet. If it had a 36-year orbit, that would be a monster of a planet. Okay, and in fact, Dr. Harrington put out a white paper report stating all of his calculations and what he thought it was, the size and the position. So, but when we get back and we take a look at the model that we place in the software and view it from the position of these ancient astronomers, what it turns out is that we get an exact match. And that was shocking. For any astronomer listening would know this. When we have an object that's on the planetary plane of Earth and is bigger than us, we have a problem.
Yes.
Okay? So,
now go back again. How long? Go back again, just a second, Gil. instead of what Sitchin came up with, which was 3,600 years, and it was an elliptical orbit, your findings were different. You want to say that again?
Yes, it is a elliptical orbit, but it doesn't have a 3,600 year range because, remember, Sitchin had to interpret clay tablets. The zero did not exist yet. They knew that through other writings that they were able to come up with a correct assumption. That they use units of 60 as a counting unit. Like a foot is a unit of 12, and Europe is a unit of 10, but they had a unit of 60 that they were using. Well, when he read the clay tablets, it pretty much said, 6 times 6 he was trying to look at, for an orbit. But they knew one of the units was 60, so they thought, because they assumed that it never came in closer than that time period, they went 60 times 60. That gave them 3,600 years. Instead, they should have left it, 60 times 6, and that gives you 360 years. This orbit is closer to 360 than it is to 3,600. And this is through... also, we can go through, and when we remember what science is, okay? There's people say, well, can you take the Bible serious, or can you take the Chinese documents serious? Can you take the clay tablets or papyrus serious? The answer to that, if it proves out. Okay, whenever you look at what the term science is like if we can take a paranormal phenomenon into the laboratory and show that it's repeatable, then there's a word for that. That's called science. And that's what we have right here. On a science basis, this object is repeatable. It follows Kepler's law of planetary motion. And we have it throughout the Bible multiple times. The eyewitness account, there's enough data in the eyewitness account that the model proves out they witnessed it. See?
Well, hold that thought right there. We'll get back to they witnessed it right after the break. We'll be up for a long segment. We'll see you on the other side. You're listening to Gil Broussard. Welcome back. Our guest is Gil Broussard, and we're discussing Planet 7X. Okay, Gil, this is a long segment, so we'll pick up where we stopped.
And
I have a question real quick.
Sure.
Kind of. I'm not quite sure how to word this, so bear with me. You touched on Noah's flood for a bit. Now, if Planet 7X is going to cause all of the catastrophes that are discussed about in Revelation, what makes it different than when it's come through other times between now and our past at Noah's flood? Is it going to do something different, react differently with the planet, be closer?
It's relative to Earth's position when it's passing through. If Earth is in the wintertime, when it's going through March, then you just have drought conditions and volcanic activities and death of birds and fish, just like we're seeing at present. But and then whether or not we have debris following it is strictly random. It really depends on the Almighty loading the cylinder. We don't know if we're going to get bird shot or double-odd buck coming at us as far as the debris field, because there's no way of predicting it, because the object passes through two meteorite belts. Whether or not that area that is passing, is it just slips through the debris, or does it go through heavy debris area and the gravity is dragging it in its wake? There's no way of telling this. NASA would have to put satellites out there to see what's trailing it. which I'm sure they have. But so can it produce what Revelation Seal 6 and Seal 7 talks about? Absolutely. The model, there's nothing stated in Revelation 6 and 7 that doesn't contradict the model. Using, what we know of planetary physics and the occurrences from meteorite showers and such. So,
okay.
So, in other words, let me answer your question, will this next time will Earth be in a worse situation than its past? I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you. But I can point out scripture that tells you that this will be the worst time in the history of Earth, it says. Now, that's left up to the reader. Do you believe the Bible or not? I'm just quoting what the Bible is saying. Okay? But I personally do not have a crystal ball, and I cannot predict the future.
Now, is there going to be... No, I appreciate that. Is there going to be pole shifts, anything like that? I mean, what about the 3 days of darkness and things like that?
Yeah, let me separate from some things that people may have heard on the internet. The poles won't shift 180 degrees, or at least not at the beginning anyway. We may have had one maybe at Noah's flood, because the event was so large, it was, according to my estimates, I have a video out, the meteor that hit the Earth was about 110 miles across. It made a crater that's about 1,100 miles across, usually 10 times larger than what the meteor hit. And that crater is the Gulf of Mexico. And the Gulf of Mexico is deeper than the average depth of the Atlantic Ocean. There's multiple characteristics to a meteorite crater, and you can find them when you look carefully at the Gulf of Mexico. Matter of fact, it goes underneath this state that I'm in, about midway of this, and half of the state is anything north of half of it is rock based. Anything south of that is where the Mississippi River filled in with settlement, and that's sitting on about a 45-degree rock shelf. It's already collapsed once, and that's what went into the Gulf, and that made the oil. Oil is pretty much buried green plant life. And matter of fact, the southern part of our state, part of Mobile, Alabama, north of Houston, all of that area, we're shifting further south and, down and south at the moment. It's so-called coastal erosion. It's not greenhouse warming. That's false information. It's so when it accumulates enough weight, it will slide again. Or when there's an impact that hits the Earth that shocks it, then it'll slide. And that will cut off about 80% of the natural gas and oil to the U.S.
Well, that would.
So we have America has a bunch of dominoes that's lined up that it cannot. It's like God lined them up because it says in the Bible, but it says 1/3 of the land, 1/3 of the grass, 1/3 of the trees, and later it mentions 1/3 of the rivers. They didn't have a word for continental crust. We're talking about an ancient language, but they're describing continental crust. And the model, you can show any model like this where only half in the month of April, it's the daylight side that's going to be hit with a meteorite shower. In the month of August, it's the nighttime side because of the way the debris is going in and circling the Earth and coming out. And the other half of the Earth is shielded because it's behind, the area that's being hit. So only half of the Earth can be hit by a meteorite shower. And it's describing in detail in the Bible that it's 1/3 of the continental crust. What half of the Earth has 1/3 of the continental crust? North and South America. And
interesting.
To give added emphasis to this, to show you that this object is real, remember the 3 hours of darkness during Yeshua's sacrifice?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a problem with astronomy right there, okay? You cannot have a solar eclipse during the time of a full moon, which Passover is on. It takes a new moon to make a solar eclipse because the moon is used to block the sun.
Right.
2, you can only have 7.3 minutes of an eclipse before Earth will rotate out of it because it's only a small spot. It's not the entire Earth. The text says the entire Earth was darkened for 3 hours. There's outside data outside the Bible that even states that, okay? So you're automatically looking at a third object that's many times bigger, and matter of fact, the model proves out an object roughly around 7 times the diameter of Earth will give you exactly a 3-hour eclipse.
Okay, say that again, Gil.
The model, the same overlay on what we've developed for the Chinese. Think of a train on a track that's going around the sun coming out. It will not jump track. That's a set path that it's going down. It may change its time on its arrival, but it's on that track. We're going to use that track or that overlay and we can duplicate using the same model these eyewitness accounts in the Bible and other outside eyewitness accounts as well. The model proves out what they saw. In other words, they could not have mimicked something falsely and still have it match the model that's following Kepler's laws of planetary motion and everything else. It's not because they had no idea of the movement of planets yet. They had no concept of that. They had no concept of Kepler's laws of planetary motion. They had nothing, no data to fake something like that and have it match. Okay? And then they could not conspire with the other group, which is roughly 360 years later, say, look, we're going to tell a common lie together, but I don't know you yet. You're 300 and something years in the future. Okay? It doesn't meet practice. Observe phenomena, bring it to laboratory, show that it's repeatable. That's science. It does not matter if it comes from clay tablets, papyrus, Bible, anywhere. You faked it, it's going to tell us you faked it. If it's real, it's going to tell us you saw something that matches all the laws that's governing the universe. Another one we can point out. Joshua's long day. For millennium, scientists have been laughing at that because they said, how is that possible? How can the Earth stop? You'd have waters going across all the continents. Well, let me tell you how the models tells us it happens.
Okay.
It reaches a point, and the tail points opposite of the sun. The path of it is coming in front of Earth. Earth has a circular orbit around. Its path is going to take it right in front of Earth by about 2 hours ahead of us, okay? But the tail is pointing at Earth because it's pointing opposite of the sun. The illuminated tail, comet-like tail.
Right.
There's two camps of thought presently in the science community on what's ruling the universe. Astronomers say the main force is gravity, but the physicists say it's electromagnetic, and the Bible is proving out
hold that
it's
right there, Gil.
electromagnetic.
Okay, well, hold that right there at electromagnetic, and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. Right before the break, Gil, you were starting to talk about physicists.
Yes.
I believe, and the difference.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there's two camps of thought on what is the ruling power that's running our universe. Is it gravity that's moving our planets, or is it electromagnetic? The astronomers say it's gravity, and the physicists say it's electromagnetic. The model proves out that it's electromagnetic in nature, because the tail, a comet tail, astronomers are saying that it's water vapor from ice. The physicists say that it's a electromagnetic field of the planet or object reacting with the solar winds, compressing it, and making a coma, which is a plasma tail, similar to a neon light. That's how a neon light would work. Okay? And that's why we see such a pronounced bright tail. Well, if that's true, then to prove out which one would be right, if the tail is pointing at Earth when it gets between us and the sun, and we're entering water vapor, then nothing should occur. But if we're entering a plasma tail, the plasma will stop electrical energy going into the north and south pole from the sun at a rate of 4.5 to 5.5% compounded hourly. Okay? Within 24 to 28 hours of entering it deeper and deeper into the plasma tail, Earth would come to a complete stop in its rotational spin. Okay? And then that would cause a 12-hour longer day, as quoted in Joshua's long day. Then it states roughly, this is outside Middle Eastern text that gives us more data on Joshua's long day. It states that roughly 2 to 3 hours later was a meteorite shower, and the biblical text tells us it took out more of the enemy than they did with a sword, and that was within the vision of Joshua and his army. That's a meteorite shower. Now,
Okay.
The other text also gives us additional data. It says him and his army saw an object that was 50 times larger than the moon. That's the viewpoint of Earth. That's not the object side. That's the viewpoint of the object from Earth. Well, if you take an object 7 times the diameter of Earth, place it halfway between the moon and Earth, you would get a visual perspective of 50 to 1. You'd also get a meteorite shower 2 to 3 hours later. You would also get Earth slowing down and Earth being delayed by 12 hours. The model proves this out.
Okay.
I actually took that model, brought it to the university, showed a physics professor. He took a minute to study the model, and he turned to me and said, "I'm the first one to ever explain this incident logically."
That's interesting.
So
we'll just call you Spock.
Okay.
Spock?
Well,
Dr. Spock? Oh, wait, Spock from Star Trek. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, well, my ears are not quite as pointy. Okay, so this is happening multiple times in the Bible of eyewitness account that the model proves out with physics, with math, with Kepler's law of the planetary motion, that you cannot fake. You just can't fake this. Okay, and if we bring it into the model, we reproduce the phenomena, We show it's repeatable. That's science. Someone says there's no science in the Bible, they're wrong. There's absolute science. As a matter of fact, it's a little bit more advanced than ours because it already nailed that the Earth is electromagnetic. I mean, the universe is ruled by electromagnetic, not gravity. You see? So, we have a serious problem. It's occurred in the past.
So what does that mean to Earth? Okay, we'll hold that thought.
Yeah, hold that thought, what it means. Okay, hold that. We're up for a long break, Gil, and then we'll be back with a long segment. So we'll see you on the other side. Thanks for tuning in to The Truth Traveler. Welcome back to The Truth Traveler. Our guest tonight is Gil. We're starting with discussing Planet 7F. And right before the break, Brad had asked what it means for Earth. I'd like to get into that, and then I've got a question too, Gil, if you can answer that one.
All right. What is that?
What does this mean for Earth? That was Brad's question. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, as Planet 7 is approaching, you know, we're going to have some effect, and as it's going towards the sun, correct. I mean, how bad is this effect going to become? And then as we have the tail pointing towards us, what is that, and how bad will that be?
Well, as far as the effects, we've already seen it since it entered our solar system. It takes roughly from the orbit of Neptune on the outer edges of our solar system, according to Kepler's laws of planetary motion, with the size of 7 times the diameter. The model tells us it takes 16 years for it to reach the sun. Then, well, another thing our model proved to us that when we turned on where the Voyager and Pioneer probe went, that's the same area of space. So it appears that they made instrument contact in 92 and 93. And by that time, about year 2000, he reached the edge of our solar system. Now, as it approached, you could see the escalation of our earthquakes in frequency and intensity, as it's several times higher. Our volcanic activity, fish kills because of the release of methane when the rocks are shattered and moving, or the vegetation at the bottom of a lake is shaken, it will release the methane, and that's why you see fish and bird killed. They're super sensitive to methane. Humans are not. Methane is odorless, so it leaves no telltale signs of it.
Right.
So we are seeing the signs as it approaches, and these are getting and more, or they're more intense.
Right.
Now, when
so if I go out and I dig me a survival shelter in the ground, will that protect me as it comes through? I mean, next year or
only to a certain degree, and only in the right area of Earth, because according to the models that I can reproduce, according to the data that the Bible is predicting, I'm not in the predicting business, but I'm looking at what it's predicting to see if it's logical in the model. Okay? Tells me that these books in the Bible are not random. It's giving us an end result. Each story is giving us data to piece together what the end result would be, because it made a comment that this will be the worst time for Earth in its history of Earth. Knowing Noah's flood, that's pretty an extreme statement. That's an extreme statement. Okay. So, as it approaches, Earth is going to enter into the plasma field slowly, losing its rotational speed at 5.5%, eventually coming to a stop. That model, there's only a biblical model. There's no outside model for scientists to use. Therefore, they will predict the wrong half of the Earth being hit by a meteorite shower, a meteor shower. They will predict the Middle East, Europe, and Asia. That's 2/3 of the continental crust. Bible clearly tells us a model that it's 1/3. Now, because of the next war in the Middle East, which is Steel 4, Steel 3 is economic collapse. Steel 4 is there's a war, pandemic disease, and some other things. Well, that war is associated with what's coming up. You can see it in the news between Israel and Syria and Iran. Well, Iran put its troops behind our lines. They're in our country. If they see any attack, then they'll go into play. They're going to do their terrorist activities. Okay, so that's that part of that scenario. But that's going to make the model that when it comes time, remember Job and Nineveh, where he gave 40-day warning to Nineveh, but he didn't perform a single miracle. The reason why he didn't have to perform a single miracle, and they believe, he had to point to the sky. In 40 days, it's rounded the sun. Now it's coming at us. You can clearly see it. That's what the model shows. That's the same model that Yeshua mentioned, says for wicked and sinful generation, they will have only the sign of Jonah in the end times. Okay? So when they get this warning, they're going to want visas and travel out of the danger zone. The countries are going to refuse them. They're locked in their own countries, the Muslims, because of their terrorist activity. This is where the Mahdi comes in and makes a false miracle. For their Mahdi, there's certain particular things that have to take place prior to this. He has to be a world leader for 7 years. He has to bring peace to the Middle East. He has to have a sign in the heaven that represents him. And now he performs a false, our Bible says a false miracle. So he will change time. He will change time by 12 hours. He would claim that he's causing the Earth rotation to change by 12 hours. And then he'll claim that he's going to allow fire to fall on their enemy, North and South America. With their life at stake. And they look at him as a god almost because of that. So that's the false miracle. Because remember, the plasma is clear. That's it may be lit up. In fact, the aurora borealis will go all the way down to the equator. It will howl like a trumpet because it's so overactive. The earth would tremble. You think the earth is falling apart, but it's not. It's part of the scenario. Then the earth will start to tilt 26 to 28 degrees. It's like two bar magnets getting close to each other. The north and the south pole will lean towards each other. This is a repeat pattern that I found in history about 3 or 4 times that Earth has tilted in its past 26 to 28 degrees. Well, when Earth tilts, you're going to have lightning strikes, huge lightning strike between the two planets. There's electrical discharges that take place when these things. Remember, to prove out that we have a electromagnetic universe, this was just proven lately. When comet Siding Spring passed near Mars, the physicists predicted that if their model is correct, then there will be electrical discharge because of the closeness of the two objects passing together. Astronomers wouldn't believe because they say it's water vapor. Guess what happened? Lightning struck between the two. Electrical discharges took place, proving that the electromagnetic model and plasma.
Electromagnetic. So with this planet coming and going, and it will have a field behind it, is that field would be electrified, so it would be attracting items from the universe. Are we going to be hit with that stuff also? Do you know? I mean, from your model.
We will be entering the debris field 2 to 3 hours later. That's what hits the 1/3 of the continental crust. The plasma only affects us on our rotational speed and our aurora borealis, reaching all the way down to the equator. Then the magnetic between the two planets will cause us to tilt. Now, when Earth tilts 26, 28 degrees, that's a movement of over 1,800 miles on the surface of Earth. Now, if it takes 5 hours coming in to cause us to tilt, and 5 hours leaving before we straighten back out again, we will reverse our tilt. Well, if you do the calc,
that's a day.
Yeah, if you do the calcs right there, 1,800 miles movement in 5 hours, that gives you very close to 350 mile an hour winds. That's an F5 tornado.
Yeah.
And that would be 90 degrees off the tilt, the point of the axis of tilt.
And will that happen for 5 hours, though?
It would take 5 hours. If it does it any quicker
no, I mean the winds.
3 hours.
The winds.
Then
will the winds be for 5 hours?
It's a percentage of decrease as you move the latitude or longitude, which
out
is
of it, right?
Towards the point of its axis of tilt. The Bible is clearly indicating one of the axis of tilt would be Jerusalem, that area there. So you have the least winds. You have 0 there. You go 90 degrees off of that plane, you have maximum wind. That is roughly the west coast of Greenland. And you draw that line around the globe. And in other words, the Arctic Circle will come down to Washington, D.C. So you have the Arctic Circle with roughly
Washington, D.C. away.
With 300 mile an hour winds. You're looking at islands being flash frozen. Now, do we have any evidence of this? In the vegetation in their stomach and their mouth, there was still foraging. They were still eating vegetation. They didn't have time to swallow it. They were frozen before they could swallow it.
Right. So we'll have a cold that comes through like the day after that just freezes you instantly.
I'm not amused by that.
No, during the tilt.
We'll be right back.
During the
tilt. After, during the tilt. Great. Okay, we'll finish that right there. On the other side, we'll be right back. Welcome back. His YouTube channel is Planet 7X. Planet 7X. You can find that up on YouTube. Okay, Gil. This is a short segment, so let's hop right back into it.
So basically, we could say that this is planet wormwood.
You cannot say that word.
No, or as they foretold in the Bible. I mean, if we're going by Revelations, and we're going to have feast, famine, like we're starting to now, and as this gets closer and falling away from us, everything's going to be like it says in the Bible, basically. I mean,
yes, whenever it's misinterpreted correctly, yes. Now, wormwood is actually a meteor that happens on the second event, 5 months later. This is more what's called Abaddon or Apollyon, which means the destroyer. That's what the planet is called in the Bible. Or fiery dragon of old, or a few other names that it calls it. But in Revelation, it's Abaddon, the destroyer. And Seal 7 talks about a fiery mountain hitting Earth that will split the Earth. It's going to hit one of our oceans, which is going to be the Pacific Ocean, because of the way Earth is rotating, the models and everything. comes up, it's split so badly that lava's coming up. It makes one of the seas boil. 1/3 of the sea life dies. Earth will wobble like a drunkard, like a hut in the wind. And we will lose our sense of time. It would be different.
Right.
Our calendar year would be different. In fact, we already lost 12 hours at least on the first event. So now noon is now midnight all the way through up to the next event, and it's even hit again, and that will change our year. So that's why we won't know when the day of resurrection is even though we can count 1,260 days on the calendar, but it doesn't mean we'll know it when it comes time to it. It says only the Father will know it. Not even Yeshua knows it. So that's why as things get really messed up. And has our time changed before? Yes, it has. The time frame before Hezekiah was, this is documented in almost every culture around the world. Their calendar year was 360 days. That 30-day months and 12 months. Not until after the event, when the sundial in the King James says the sundial, did it change for 365 days. And that's when the lunar calendar started. It was not a lunar calendar
because of the
before.
Romans.
What was that?
I said, and also because of the Romans adding extra days in there during Caesar's power.
Well, it seems like they keep playing with their calendar, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we pretty much had 7 days a week, except for the Romans tried to make it 10. According to my research, that didn't last long, because no one else wanted to follow it. But in the Hebrew, it doesn't say if the shadow went backwards on a sundial. The shadow went backwards on steps. And that proves out in a model. A sundial does not prove out. If it would have really been a sundial, then that means the Earth would have to come to a complete stop, reverse X amount of degrees of 10, come to a complete stop again, double its speed to catch up to where it was before, because there was no delay in the hours. That's not possible. Every continent would have been covered with oceans. That doesn't happen. But if a window that is facing south with a stairway casts a shadow on the steps of a stairway, and it moves 10 steps, the shadow, then you're looking at a tilt of 26 to 28 degrees.
Right.
That's exactly what we
have
see.
tilted already somewhat.
Yes, multiple times.
Hold that thought there. We'll be right back.
Hold that thought at the tilt?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be right back to Gil Broussard after this. Welcome back to the True Traveler. Our guest tonight is Gil Broussard. Gil, I got a couple questions. I'm going to throw them out there real quick. If we follow the Bible and we believe there's going to be a remnant, and we believe there's still going to be civilization left on Earth after this, it's just going to be a really tough time. And there's not all of us that are going to survive. But if we believe in a remnant, how are we, I mean, when you think about this, are like the winds going to be temporary? They're going to go away? Or are they going to last for days at a time? How's the remnant going to even survive this?
The high winds are in one direction as it's tilting, whether it's 3 to 5 hours. Then as it moves out of the way, it comes back. They have opposite winds of 3 to 5 hours. Okay? After that, Earth is out of the plasma field. It's going to, it is receiving the electrical energy from the sun that goes down the north, and it'll start its rotation again. Okay? But then there'll probably be tidal waves or coastal flooding, severe coastal flooding, when it cranks back up again. You see? Because the water was still, and it may I don't have the data to say how much torque the Earth would have generate when it comes back on. The remnant that you're talking about, which many people have misconfused with a rapture, the remnant is taken to a place in the wilderness, it says, on Earth. And the reason why for that is because you can't experience how powerful the Almighty is unless He's protecting you and everything else is going on to this extent around you. That gives you the awe and the power of God to feel. So you will feel it, taste it, smell it, see it, and experience it. But you're going to be doing it in a place of safety where He's protecting you. Okay?
Well, how do we even survive the meteor showers? I mean...
Well, it's only on half of the Earth that gets hit. Okay?
Yeah, Israel.
Now, the reason why it's Israel... Yeah, there's always... I found at least 12 points that point to where it specifically says the remnant needs to be in Jerusalem at Mount Zion. And this falls in line with the custom that the Jews have been holding for many, many years. At the Feast of Passover, they set a table for Elijah. They open a door waiting for him to come in and say, the groom is coming. It follows a Hebrew wedding, not a Western wedding. Totally different. What's interesting, in Revelation, it mentions a date with the moon at the foot of Virgo, crown of 12 stars, and it says the sun illuminates Virgo. That word sun in the Greek is not translated correctly. We don't have a Hebrew and an Aramaic version of Revelation. But there's Hebrews of Matthew, there's the rest of the book we can find either Aramaic or Hebrew version of it. So we can confirm, because Aramaic is 70 to 80% alike to Hebrew. It's very similar. Okay? So, what I found in the past when it's been marked as sun, it actually says illuminated body. So we put illuminated body where the Greek has sun. The model shows that it's this planet that's illuminating Virgo. The tail is piercing Virgo. That's the sign in heaven. Meaning that's when He's coming for His bride. Mid of night, mid of week is a custom. Well, guess what? On March 26th, given on what Revelation is pointing to, you go in astronomy, it gives you March 26th. Exactly 3.5 to 4 days earlier than that is a full moon. Feast of Passover. Where Elijah says, the groom's coming mid of week, mid of night. After the feast, you fast for 3 days, like the book of Esther. She fasted for 3 days. Bingo. The groom comes. Remember the parable of the wise and foolish virgins?
Yes.
The difference between the wise and foolish is the wise have 2 portions of oil. A portion is supposed to last you throughout a whole night of 12 hours. The wise have 2 portions. Why? Because that day, because of the rotational delay, on the Jerusalem side, you have 24 hours of night, not 12. On our side of North America, we have 24 hours of daylight. Because Earth you get 12 hours of extra. Remember Joshua's long day. Okay? One half of the globe will have extra light, the other one have extra dark. So the wise have 2 portions of oil. And when does the Messiah come back for mid of night? Not midnight, mid of night. So when they're trimming their wick and replenishing the oil, the foolish ran out. They have to go back to town. And as they relight their lamp, that's when He comes in. Says, come with me. The foolish missed it. They go in. He closes the door. If it's Petra, it doesn't matter where it's at. As He says, He brings us. Only thing you have to do is be there at the appointed time and place. The word Mekrah in many Bibles is translated as feast. That's not what the word means. The word means rehearsal or reenactment. A feast can be in a rehearsal or reenact, but it's not what the word means, rehearsal. If you were going to have a wedding and you're at the church waiting and the bride doesn't show up, are you married? Answer no. Her duty is to show up at the appointed time and place. That's her mikrah. If you're fulfilling the mikrah that's requiring us to be in Jerusalem already, each year, you're supposed to take half of your tithing that pays for your cost of plane, food, travel, hotel. Half of the tithing goes towards whatever's left over goes to the poor. Okay? But some people live close, some people live far away. And they're practicing a real mikrah, just like they practiced Passover, and when it really happened, they knew who the Messiah was, what's happening in front of them. Passover is fulfilled. The feast of Passover has not been fulfilled. He's going to pick up right where he left off at. And this is basically an open book test that many is going to fail, because it says a remnant is only going to make it, which is a subset of the church, the body of the church. It's not the entire church. It's a subset, a small one. I estimate to be about maybe 2.5 million or so, about 2.3, which is, because if you look at the 144,000, they only count the male as the head of the unit. Okay. So if they have a righteous children and wife, they're also there. So if you do the count,
but you're saying that they have to go to Israel? The remnant will be in Israel?
Not just in Israel, in Jerusalem on Mount Zion. We know where Mount Zion is now. It's not the Temple Mount. Jewish archaeologists have found the remnant of Solomon's temple. It's 600 feet south of the Temple Mount. That's the Roman fort. The Wailing Wall is actually the wall of the Roman fort.
That's right. I know. Is it supernaturally he's going to relocate most of the people, or how's that going to work?
He says he re-energizes in the Bible. What that may entail, I don't know, but on the third day you are re-energized. You fast and you whatever way that he wishes to get us there, but we got to meet him there. We don't need to know where he's bringing us, but he's bringing us somewhere on earth in the wilderness where it's a place of protection. My guess is Petra, but I don't want to say that is because Moses' brother Aaron is buried at the top of the mountain. The Israelites were there at one time. You can't have a body of an Israelite there without them being there.
True.
See? They were already trained carvers of carving images. If you look at the skill level of these facades, whatever you want to call these carvings of these, they're negative relief. They're carved into the mountain. If you make an error, you have no place to go. It's not like carving a column and lifting it with a crane and place it in there. That's not what they did. They carved it out of the rock face as a negative relief. That takes the highest skill level of a mason. You can't tell me a herdsman herding sheep and goats picked up a chisel and carved that. That was trained craftsmen that did that from Egypt, probably. There were slaves carving the images of Pharaoh deeply into the stone. They're very skilled. So it may be
I
that
definitely
way,
think we're going to have supernatural protection, but
exactly. But you're not going to go on the ground waiting for them. The bride and the bridemaid, they're two different groups. The bride and the bridemaid, they're not the same group. The bride is only from Israelite tribes. The bridemaid is from any tribe, and there's more of them than the bride. Okay? If you multiply 3.5 times every male, that's the bride, in other words, a priest, you're looking at roughly about 500,000. I don't think the number 5 in the wise versions is random. I think it means 5 times the bride. Well, that roughly gives us about 2.3 to 2.5 million going into the place of hiding. That's about what the estimate of the actual exodus out of Egypt was. You think that's a coincidence?
No.
The stories in the Bible are not coincident. They're data points giving us the right data. Remember how he says, my people die of lack of knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
When we study these stories in the level of this amount of the science matching, you're getting the exact data you need to know what's going to happen and how not to be scared at the end times right here.
No, we can't live in fear. We just have to have faith. We'll be right back. Let's go Broussard after this. Welcome back to True Traveler. Our guest tonight has been Gil Broussard. His YouTube channel is Planet 7X. You can go there and listen to more videos, that type of thing. But to further delve into it, you'll also be able to see charts, that kind of thing. Gil, we're almost out of time. We just have a couple minutes left, and I have another question.
Sure.
If you go back and you read the translations from the Chinese on the supernova of 1054 AD,
yes,
they talked about being able to see this object. It was bright like Venus. Okay.
Yes.
When will we be able to see this planet 7X? If it's so close that next March it's going to cause problems, when will we be able to see this, and where should we look in the sky for it?
Well, at the time period the Chinese saw it, they were in the winter months, so they could see it at a different angle. This next time around, it will be approaching us, and it'll be blocked by the sun when it's coming into our inner, on the inside of Earth's orbit, in other words.
Okay.
So we really won't have much of a viewpoint, except there'll be a few people that might better see it in the very early morning hours. But most of the world was going to have a 40-day warning as Nineveh, because that's when it rounds the sun, and we clearly see it, and now it's coming at us, and we're moving forward, and it misses us by about 2 hours. It's coming ahead of us about 2 hours, according to the or an hour about, I think. I think it might pass a little bit closer this time. We may have a viewpoint of...
Like how many miles, how many miles are we talking here, Gil?
What's
closer than the
moon? 250,000 miles between here and the moon, which is roughly, let me give you a scale that helps you out. You can put 30 Earth diameters between here and the moon. Okay?
Okay.
This object is 7 Earth diameters. You put it in the middle of that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
It's going to go in between us and the moon.
Right.
Right. There's 30 Earth diameters. Because it's hard for people to picture a 250,000 miles. Okay. So if you go with 30, that unit of measure, they can picture that.
Right.
Okay. So it's going to, at some point, it will definitely be close enough to see.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Because the Bibles are indicating, the stories in the Bible are indicating what we will see. Remember Joshua? They saw an object 50 times, from the viewpoint. I think our viewpoint would be closer to 60 to 80 because of the model tells me we may run in, if it goes half, it's going to plow into the moon. Because it's 4 days after Feast of Passover, which is a full moon. It would put the moon in the way of this normal path at 50%. So if it clears the moon, that means it has to come closer, which would also represent in the text that this time is the worst event of Earth's history. So it has a potential. The model doesn't disprove it not passing closer. Okay, as long as we're not at what's called as a Roche limit. The Roche limit, according to my calc, is what actually is the limit of gravity. That's where you put geocentric orbit, which is roughly for Earth, it's 1.5 times its radius. you get a satellite past that point, gravity can't pull it back. Well, if it can't pull back just a simple satellite, then how is the moon affecting us when it has 1/5 the gravity?
Right.
Okay? The math doesn't really work. It's electromagnetic in nature. The formula still works, what they're using on planetary motion, but it's not gravity. It's electromagnetic is causing the formula to work out. So it's just titled wrong. Okay? That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And,
so will that affect any of our stratosphere?
I would think so.
That I don't,
like the magnetosphere and the ionosphere?
Right.
All I know is that the plasma, it may or may not, that's beyond my skill level to tell you that. I have no idea.
Okay. All right.
All I know is we need to seek the tilt, the point of the axis of tilt. That is the safest place.
Yeah.
And one is Jerusalem. The other one is the middle of the Pacific. I don't think you want to be there because of tidal waves. So there's only one point on Earth that's really the best, that's around the Israel area.
Gil Broussard, we're out of...
Well, underneath the videos, they can download my book. It's free, and all of these graphs that are shown in the video.
Awesome, awesome. Great. Go to Planet 7X at YouTube. Thank you, Gil Broussard, for being with us tonight. I really appreciate it.